It's the Indie Review Show.
Yes.
Also, one of the many mistakes that I will probably make tonight due to sleep deprivation is we sat here for like a minute and 45 seconds before I pushed the "Are you sure you want to go live?" yes button. I'm just waiting for the 2 minute thing to anyway. So we started the video on time. We just didn't start the actual live stream. So welcome to the Indie Review Show. Oh man,
I love it. Welcome. How are you guys doing out there in Indie Review Show agent land? Viewers are agents. So I will just say, you guys, like it or not, are IRS agents. Yeah, how you doing, Corey?
good. Yep,
Right.
doing well. A little tired. I'm excited about today's. Book.
Me too.
Yeah. So I think I will probably spend less time flipping through the pages of the book and more time just kind of like talking about it because I'm curious to get your reactions and interpretations of what you think Jim Henson was going for on this one.
Yeah.
But let's do our intro. So I am Corey Kerr.
And I'm Joshua Kemble.
And this is the Indie Review Show.
This is the series where we review the best of indie comics and other media like movies, TV, cartoons, books, and did we mention bizarre pre-Muppet comic adaptations of screenplays?
The idea is that we're pulling back the curtains on our inspirations. Josh and I have been professional illustrators, cartoonists, animators, graphic designers. We both taught at the college level. We're getting into the things that inspire us. Do you like my little I threw you a loop and didn't tell you about it?
I saw it beforehand. Otherwise, I would have been stumbling over that one.
All right. So real quick plugs. So you can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com. And if you go to CoreyKerr.com, you can check out animations and other things. I'm working on one right now where I'm posting a lot of stuff to Instagram. So go ahead and check that stuff out. And that would be awesome. You just go to CoreyKerr.com. You can click on what's new or wander around there a little bit. But got some funny animations you can watch and a comic you can read and some other stuff there. Josh, where can we find your stuff?
All right. So anytime somebody says what's new, I always just want to go pussycat. Whoa. But anyhow, I didn't think Tom Jones would come into my subconscious today, but it totally did. Okay. So check out Two Stories, book one. This is my graphic novel about it grapples with questions of faith, mental illness, depravity, and ultimately redemption in a fallen world. It's 122 hand-lettered, hand-inked, hand-illustrated pages, and I'll go back to the main cam. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth picking up. I'd also say keep an eye out if you're local to Southern California. I'll be doing a signing on the 2nd at Bases Comics and Cards in Lancaster, California. And then on the 3rd, that's June 3rd, I will be doing another signing at Voodoo Vinyl in Lancaster, California as well. I'm starting in my hometown and then I'm kind of working my way out. So if you're in like the SoCal area, you can check out more on my events page, which is on joshuakemble.com. And it should just say like new events and it'll list like upcoming appearances as I work my way through Southern California. So yeah, are we all set on your end, Corey?
We are all set.
All right, let's switch over and talk about this beautiful book. All right.
Okay, so this is I still have, after reading it twice in the last 72 hours, I still have no idea how I'm gonna do this book. So I'm really excited about it, but it is one of the strangest books out there because it's a lost screenplay from Jim Henson and Jerry Jewell, his longtime collaborator, and realized by Ramon Perez. But it's kind of an experimental film. So it's like an experimental film. They spent several years kind of working on it between like the late 60s and early 70s. And then as that happened, then the Muppets and Sesame Street kind of took off. And that's kind of explained in the foreword. And so they kind of abandoned it. And then the Jim Henson historian kind of has unearthed it, and and suggested that they kind of adapt it. And so anyway, so they reached out to Archaea, and her name is Karen Falk, and they reached out to Archaea and they said, hey, let's get this done. And they said, well, we've got the perfect guy. And Perez literally is the perfect guy. Like in the back, you've got these notes, and we've got Lisa Henson, who basically says, like, I don't think there's another artist out there that could have done, what Perez did. And we also have just incredible photos and from the archive, and dressed up as a monk and diving into a swimming pool as Abraham Lincoln. So anyway, it's a super fun book, and one of my favorite things about this book is that even in the forewords, they're using the actual photographs of the script that have been messed with. They kind of come in, but these are the actual, like, typed out, early 1970s, things with little notes that are doing whatever. And you get a little bit of snippets of what the script actually says, and you're reading the foreword, and then you go on through this and you read kind of the different things. And then we have a note of introduction that a lizard is looking at. It says Tale of Sand is a surrealistic comedy drama. Most of the film would be shot on location in the desert of the southwestern United States. There are many shots contrasting the vast desert lands with incongruous situations. The mood of the photography is sometimes frighteningly realistic. There's very little dialogue, and the sound effects are all slightly exaggerated, as they would be in the desert. And I read that because I think the comic has started. Like, it kind of feels like it's like you realize, like, oh, okay, cool. Here's some forward stuff. A lot of people might skip this, but then you turn the page and we still have script kind of starting to fade in. And this is like setting the mood, like opening shot stuff.
I also like, and just because I'm a little familiar with this book as well, I love this book. So if you could go back again,
okay.
I just think this is so essential, where there's also, and this is just going to be repeated all throughout, there's a subtle introduction of color. So it's like, it's priming you for the beginning, because it's now that note is like slightly yellow.
Yeah. So you have all black and white.
Yeah.
And then you have this subtle color. And another thing that they're doing is an illustrated creature breaking the borders of this text box, which is another thing that, I mean, Perez throws all of the rules out the window when it comes to, like, traditional text boxes or just panels in general.
Hey, Corey, I don't know why, but we're seeing like a frames per second thing. I don't know if that's
fun.
Sorry.
Nope. Do that. There we go.
All right.
Okay. Sweet. So you get a little bit of and there's just beautiful ink wash and coloring. Mixed with there's these ideas of, like, this soft, lineless kind of ink wash stuff mixed with, like, traditional comic line, and then just kind of like almost like light leaks that happen on a slightly damaged vintage camera. And then we get bits and pieces of this, but you can read it, but it's still kind of, whatever. And it kind of says Max stares, into the sun. Then he turns and runs. And then we still are in a situation where it still kind of feels like I could totally see this type of collage.
Yeah.
At the end of a book or at the beginning of the book, or printed on the inside cover of, the book as like just a liner. But we're actually in the comic now.
Yeah, it's so good. And just the color use just kills me. Like, throughout this whole thing. So Ramon Perez did the colors for this as well?
I believe so. Because it doesn't list anyone else. I think he also wrote the comic adaptation. So because it doesn't say illustrated by, it says as realized by. I think he did. I think they gave him the screenplay, and then he turned it into this. And so
wow,
kind of like a one-man show here.
Because I mean, the crazy, like, split compliments, and like, I mean, it's just so sophisticated already. It just kills me. This book kills me.
And really interesting really interesting mixture of different things that normally wouldn't really work well, where we have like kind of a mid-century modern lineless color palette
Yeah.
mixed with, like comic art, kind of indie comics where they do like the single color touch on top of, that lineless art again, plus ink wash, and then just text and signs. And these are actual pages, but then illustrated over the top of them are like lizards and stains and bullet holes and, as if it's
So
burnt.
cool.
And so it's just this beautiful collage. And then in the panels of all of these kind of collage pages, you have all this crazy stuff going on, like he's walking and he is done in graphite. And
Yeah.
then the people that are next to him are a color hold brush ink, while we have like a hedgehog checking on like a dead field mouse.
It's just so cool.
And then the best part of the next few pages, just watch for this monkey. Right? So we have this monkey that kind of shows up and is just dancing and singing. And we've got like, the crazy kind of glasses that you would send away for in comic books. And, there's like creepy people and clowns like watching other people make out. And then just because it's fairly busy, we get juxtaposition of color, temperature to kind of pull our main character out of that. But we start to see him kind of involved, but this is where he shows up. So this is Mac. So this is the main character, Mac. And we start to follow Mac through this kind of crazy situation with the occasional kind of creepy black and white, like sick and dying pig next to like some kind of crouched old man and a snake and a snare drum with like a Band-Aid on it. And then we have this monkey, right? And dogs and that clown again. So there's this giant party going on, and we keep seeing Mac kind of grabbed by people as if they know him, and he's very uncomfortable. And this is something that Perez does that's just incredible, is we don't need dialogue right here of Mac saying like, hey, what's going on? Or I feel uncomfortable. Like the acting that's going on the characters' faces and the body language is just amazing. Right. And so the juxtaposition of everyone except for him continues to come through. And then I love this kind of foreground, midground, background into the crowd. Like the background of the crowd becomes almost like single line gestural, and then you get a few figures, and then we get like full color.
Yeah, dude. And just the yellow, right? Like just against that really bold color held, dark purple line art, and then the purple shadow. It's just like, yeah, if for anything, like at this point, I hope most people would already be sold on just like, this is a book to own at minimum, just for like visual, like color ideas. I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that we have repeating characters. So there's the chaos, but there's actually characters that come through. So here's this guy. This is the creepy guy that was looking at them making out earlier. This is the drunk guy that put his hand, and so we see all this stuff. And I mean, just in this left page alone, right? This is the guy that was doing the trumpet solo from 2 or 3 pages ago. And then we go back to, I mean, just incredible ink wash with hard lines, single color, but juxtaposed against, color temperature. So we go warm, it gets a little bit brighter, it starts to cool off, and then he's removed and everybody starts to warm up as he's leaving.
So great.
And then our first real kind of burst of earth tones and reds are when we are introduced to this character who is sharpening a straight razor and is obviously evil because he has a goatee and an eye patch. And we're walking towards this. And, just for fun, there's Dennis the Menace with his pet armadillo kind of watching them walk by. I just love that we have this shot because this feels very cinematic to me. This is one of those moments that you don't get a lot in comics.
Yeah.
Because people don't think, to pull the camera back and just like give us a little bit of texture of what's going on.
It's so true.
Okay, then we meet the Sheriff Tate. And anyway, there's very little dialogue, so I'll read some of this. Congratulations, boy, this is a big day for us. And he says, Weller, I'm Sheriff Tate. Come on in, son, come on in. It's time for your instructions. And then we go red again, right? And so we kind of start to see that like there are certain colors that are assigned certain character types.
Yeah.
Shut up, you idiots. And then cigarette. Now let's get on with the, and you'll notice that this is the beginning of like a running gag. There are several running gags that happen throughout this entire comic. And one of them is that Mac's main goal is just to light this cigarette. And like kind of through the slapstick and like, that anticipation of almost getting it and then having it pulled away, that continues to happen where he just continues. So he lights this. He gets really close. As he's talking, he just takes it away and tosses it. And he goes, cigarette. All right, let's get this over with. I've prepared the map for you. Mac obviously has no idea what's going on. He's like, map? And so then they start talking about the map. Follow the map and you should be okay. Now don't get ahead of me, son. He's like, follow the map to where? Now don't get ahead of me, son. Remember that the worst thing you can do is panic. If you don't panic, you got a real chance of making it. He goes, making it? He says, now we're here, and you can get here to Eagle Mountain. You'll be safe. So then they go through, and they're trying to figure out everything. He tells him he gets a head start, and he gets a 5-minute head start, and put some supplies in your rucksack, food, water, and a few other things you'll need, which kind of just reminds me of like 80s cartoons and late 70s kind of styled things. Like his rucksack is kind of one of those bottomless pits, like, Zelda and Warner Brothers types of characters, how they can just pull whatever they want out. And so just a few other things you'll need. And this terrified guy comes in and says that it's time. Congratulations, my boy. It's time to go now. One more thing. Don't trust the map. So he's spent several pages talking about this map and then tells him don't trust it as he kind of kicks him out the door. He's signing autographs. People are blowing him kisses. There's balloons. There's, people celebrating. Good luck. We love you. People are taking pictures of him with old vintage cameras. We've got cheerleaders, people that are popping the cork on champagne bottles, a guy on stilts. Just, more crowd scene insanity. They hand him the key to the village. This girl gives him a bouquet of flowers. This hula dancer gives him a lei. And on and on and on. It's just, I don't know. Josh jokingly said, I think you're going to end up just saying, look at this page. Isn't it amazing? Look at this page. Isn't it amazing? So anyway, a skywriter, writes good luck. He's very confused. Well, the time has come. It's a great honor that we've sent you forth. I can offer you no further words of advice except to remind you that we'll have the full 10 minutes head start. You said 5 before. This I can promise. And now, son, cross the line. Go on. Cross the line. Only 10 minutes. And then my guess is that Josh is going to have a lot of fun with this particular panel because it's one of those very subtle kind of hesitation panels. So we see him you see him walking, you see him looking at the line, scratching his head, and then this hesitation. We don't see him actually start. We just see him sort of start. And then, all heck breaks loose. We've got streamers and party poppers going off. And then they say, run, boy, run. 10 minutes. And so he takes off. And this is where I really feel like the animation of it and the film style comes in. Because if you look at every frame that we see him in, it's a full run cycle.
Yeah.
And so we have key forward, flowers back, flowers forward, key back, flowers back, key forward. And it's just very fluid. And what I love about this is that we get a little bit of that kind of drifting film that happens when something leaves the bottom and it enters the top. And so we get these ideas of kind of this type of thing. And all of this is happening in this stark desert with lizards and cacti and snakes and crows and ravens watching him. And this nice just panoramic shot. Here's the village that he's leaving. So the way that they set the setting here is very subtle and just incredible.
Yeah, and I love the page compositions. I mean, they're just like if you're gonna go kind of like breaking the borders, this is a really good comic to look at for that.
Yeah.
Look at those spreads too, just taking full advantage of these beautiful like full page spreads.
Yeah. And so
wow.
The next I don't know 50 pages are this guy is Mac's journey through this desert. And we start to see this introduction of this again red bearded character with the eye patch and the umbrella and the 3-piece suit. And then he starts to dig through his rucksack. He finds a sound effects album, some cash, like a full like cannon casing, a small key. He's throwing the lei, he's throwing the flowers, and then he reaches into his shirt pocket. He finds the cigarette, and then he finally finds a match. And as he lights the match, kapow! And then we have somebody up on the hill, right? Notice the difference in illustration style. And then everything gets inverted as he's getting shot at. He runs away. Okay. And I love that he comes back to grab his flowers. That's really important. Then they get shot. And not once. I think they shoot every head of every flower. So he darts around. He kind of circles back.
And just the color, like, again, it's just so playful and almost effortless the way it just shifts entirely to like an inverted color health, like yellow and black. It's just so exciting.
Yeah, and it hints that it's going to do that with kind of a misregistration shift of the fill color.
Yeah.
And so you almost start to feel the shift until it happens. And so it's not just like that. This is the first time I've seen them kind of like shift. That white starts to kind of bleed outside of the bounds of the ink lines there. So cool. And we continue to get that almost as if there's a significant amount of motion happening, that's in the coloring as well.
So good.
So he continues to get shot at, and then he finally climbs up. He's kind of sneaking around. He finally climbs up and he finds the script of the movie that he's in, a cup of tea, and all the shell casings. And then he carries on. And as he's dragging the key along the ground, it gets caught in a bear trap, which is lucky because he looks up and it's a whole like minefield full of bear traps. So then he uses the key to snap them all. This guy, he goes to sleep, and then our gentleman who shows up in spats with his umbrella and 3-piece suit kind of pokes him, and then just leaves a giant cartoon bomb. And so he wakes to the sound of the bomb, and I love the close-up of his eye with the reflection of the fire. It's just sheer terror, but we know exactly why because of the reflection. It's just genius. So then he throws the bomb at the guy, narrowly escapes. This guy just, climbs out of the hole, brushes himself off, fixes his tie, dabs his forehead. And then I assume he's telling him a story. It goes a little bit surreal. I'm not sure that we're meant to understand what's going on, but we start to get the introduction of these two characters again in warm tones, with Mac and Yellow kind of running with this split page of Mac and our villain here.
I always read it as like it's like he's almost like, oh, wait a minute, I know that guy.
Yeah, because it could also be a flashback, but we don't see him in the flashback, so it could be like a first-person view. But there's some sort of connection. And then I love the symbolism here of, the bride and her dove and the groom and his snake. And then they drop the champagne glasses, which start to get eaten by the desert as they kind of wander off towards the starry night sunset.
Such a cool design.
And then he almost gets hit by a car. There's little things like this. I'm just going to bring this up to the camera a little bit closer here. This whole sequence of 3 panels, I love it because it's like old school cartooning that you would get in like Sunday comics, almost Family Circle style, where he's looking, he's squinting, and then we see that he has identified what he's looking at because we have like ... arrow, and X marks the spot. Like, there's the mountain I was looking for on this map. I mean, that whole sequence is just beautiful, silent cartooning.
That's so great.
So then he almost gets hit by a car. And again, we go from like incredibly detailed illustrations, and then just look at his face. Literally like emoji style face, just like dots and an upside down half circle. So then he starts to try to thumb a ride. There's like a million cars driving by. The turtle has crossed the road completely unscathed that he met before he got hit.
Which is definitely a good little bit where it's like literally the whole time that's happening, the turtle's just slowly gathering his way across.
So then he finds a stop sign, leans up against the stop sign. Someone stops. He waves at him. They roll the window down. Oh, look, it's our evil couple here. We open the door and release a lion. And then drive off, and he gets chased by the lion.
And just this beautiful shifting of color and approach too, where the lion goes from like this, wow, just the color and the variety of.
It's interesting that we have no panels here, but there's a clear distinction because of the color and the direction.
Yeah,
he's crossing the line of action several times, but we have these huge color changes on the color holds and the fills that allow us to say like, oh, it's happening layered sequentially here.
Yeah, 100%.
And then the lion is shot by the great white hunter, strapped to the front of his Cadillac, and he drives away. And then we have a French restaurant.
Sorry, that hunter is just such a like colonial looking dude.
I know. And so just bizarre, right? Exaggerated, bizarre, surreal kind of 1970s film.
And then I love that we've been noticing this all the way throughout, but the painterly elements that creep in at different points, but they're so thoughtfully executed and presented that they don't feel out of place. It's really amazing.
Yeah. And then this is really nice because, again, we're using color to kind of help us understand what's going on. And so if you look, the inside of this shack, it's like the TARDIS. It's much bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, but it's very blue. The outside is very yellow, and the door that connects these two worlds is a mixture of blue and yellow. And so we get this, he's peeking in and he starts to mix the color himself as he touches the door, right? As he approaches this door, Henry's, he gets a peek here. He's startled by the maitre d', runs around to the backside and starts looking through a peephole at an old jazz singer. The jazz singer's young, but an old school jazz singer. So he starts to look through. Several people kind of stumble out. The maitre d' comes and gets him and says, "Table for one." He says, "I'm not dressed for it." He says, "Oh, the informal then." And so take the elevator. Going down, all of a sudden this door is an elevator, and he kind of like bails out at the last second. The shed just goes into the ground, and he's left alone. Again, very frustrated. Still hasn't been able to light his cigarette or get a drink. Love this lizard. And he reaches this. He's going forever. You can tell that this is a very long thing. He's very frustrated. He continues. There's a sign up ahead. We have leading lines leading to this side. It's a very exciting sign. He gets to the point of those leading lines that actually weren't in perspective, but were a giant triangle. And the sign just says infinity.
And I also love the lizard that just kind of happened to creep up. I love those little details,
Yeah, there's a lizard that just kind of follows him the entire time. So then he sees a fire and he gets very excited because he's like, I'm going to light my cigarette. And I love this panel of just satisfaction here. He's just like, I'm finally going to get to smoke this cigarette. He leans down with it in his mouth. Smokey the bear comes, douses it, and tamps on it, and then runs away. Oh man, it's so great. I can imagine watching this in the theaters, and this would just be so hilarious. And then just the design of this. He's got the squinty eye. He's really focused.
With like one objective, just to completely put out that fire right on time.
So then he sees this old school ice cream logo looking dude running with this giant block of ice. And so he checks him out with his spyglass that he pulls out of his infinite Mary Poppins bag. And he starts trying to run alongside him.
And I just love the costume of that character too.
Yeah. I mean, he's so determined. And you start to see the ice melting. He's shrinking. We see the struggle, the running, and we see this kind of nice flow that just leads down. If you just follow the ice cube, there's this nice leading line. And then we get our female character here. He runs up and plink, the ice has melted to a perfect cube size. And she says, well, and she's got some cigarettes and he asks for, I love that he asks for it in an icon.
Yeah.
And he's like, do you have a lighter? So she reaches into her purse and hits him in the face with a pie. It's just so funny. So anyway, so then a giant wave comes up, washes him away, and she says, by the way, don't drink the water. It's salty, for the sharks. And so a giant shark comes up, he punches it in the nose, it bites his foot, and she gets into her car and, in 1972, gets her car phone out and makes a phone call. That phone call, on the other end of the phone call is our goateed friend.
I love it.
And he answers, he puts the phone down, and we get red. I mean, it's a little bit more pink here. We get those warmer tones for our villain. Yellow again. And he comes up, and here's this little mouse. This has nothing to do with anything. I just love this little guy right here. And so then he sees this big giant cement truck, chunka, chunka, chunka. He's looking at it. He ducks so he's not seen. He sees the guy, pushes the button, and fills up his martini and an olive. Doop. And we see him licking his lips as this guy walks away and leaves a martini glass. So then he runs down, he grabs the glass, he clicks the button, and he's covered in concrete. And so then as he's brushing the concrete, off of his legs and getting it out of his shoe, he gets hit by a golf ball. And my two favorite characters in this whole comic, Clara and Marjorie, show up. They say, oh, look, Clara, that young man has found our golf ball. Young man, that was very sweet of you. We've been looking for Clara's ball for ever so long. It took a bad bounce off a tree on the dog leg of the 13th hole. I thought we'd never find it. These guys are dressed like they just walked off the plantation in 1820 or something.
Yeah.
Clara, dear, 9-iron is the wrong club to make that shot. You'll never break away. Shut up, Marjorie. This one's for you. For gratitude for your assistance. Come along now, Marjorie. And they give him, we even have like little directional arrows, little directional arrows showing us what's happening. And we kind of flow through this, get a nice little hero shot of, is that Clara? No, that's Clara. And then they give him a whistle, as they drive away and say, really, this is the biggest sand trap I've ever seen. We really should speak to someone about it. Shut up, Marjorie. And so we have the whistle that says for emergencies.
And does he at this point has like a hole in his shoe now from the shark too, right?
Yeah, actually, if you go to the back here, in the character designs, Ramon has given himself notes that says hair combed, but as the story progresses, it becomes more and more tousled and he gets more and more stubble. And and his shoulders, blah blah blah. So he's actually designed in this that Mac gets more and more messed up as he goes. He grows facial hair that he didn't have before. His shirt gets ripped, his pants start to degrade, and he's got the hole in his shoe for the entire time that showed up because of the shark.
So good.
Now we start to see scorpions next to llamas. He's looking around.
Yeah, Frank just said I like the colors. Yeah, there is not there are a million reasons to own this book, but the color alone.
Yeah.
And also just the cartooning, but the color is just stunning.
Yeah. So I'm going to just point out a couple things. I mean, I think you could look at this spread alone for a long time, but I love how we're no longer breaking panels at all. We're just in a Salvador Dali nightmare.
Yeah.
Where the pupil of his eye is his head. And we get music notes, and the sun begins to turn into gears of a clock with a timepiece, and we've got skeletons along with lizards and
that's so incredible.
Reindeer, and this mountain becomes this turtle as the turtle just gets up and walks away, and a groundhog pokes down into the frame from the sky. There's floating rocks, and there's wolves that are on the moon howling. The snake is, 40 feet long as it kind of slithers in and out of these mountains. And the turtle has melted and warped and become the map as it's walking away.
So good. And it just totally signifies, there's music and there's time passing and a lot of wandering around this crazy desert,
Right. I'm actually very curious about what the script says about this, because I know you could do weird stuff in film, but I'm not sure what was actually called for here.
Yeah.
But
well, maybe it was just, it's so hard to, wow.
So then we have the trail becoming a snake about to eat a mouse, and he comes up on an old record player. So he gets out his records and he puts on a Stampede, and then we hear and see the Stampede. So he lifts up the Stampede and he starts trying out all kinds of different records. He puts the needle back down. Stampede shows up again. He picks it up. So he puts on Explosions. He tosses that one. And now he's just listening to music again, and he's pulled out a hoagie sandwich. He falls asleep. And as he falls asleep, the music slowly turns into chunga, 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 scritch, scritch, as it hits the edge. And that turns into the sound of this guy in a tank. And so he shows up in his tank. And the first thing that he thinks to do is, I've got to get my sound effects. And so he runs out of the way. He's got this tank. He gets his sound effects. He puts the record on. He drops the needle, and the sound effects is Explosions, side B. And when the needle drops, he blows the tank up.
Huh.
And luckily, there's a Native American to help this guy out of the hole. And he pays him some money and then pushes him off a cliff because he's evil. And then our Bedouin friends show up, hit him in the back of the head, and he wakes up. Red tent. They're going through his stuff. They cut his restraints. They find his cigarette. And he hands this, and I love the way he's bowing as he hands it to the guy in charge. And he's about to light it, and he's like, "What? Lightning bolt? It's my cigarette." And so he punches him, which is not a great move. And he gets tackled. And then they weigh his life in the balance somehow. But I mean, just the scene is just incredible.
It is.
I'm not exactly sure what's going on.
Yeah.
But I think it has something to do with the fact that, if this goes one way or the other, on this palm tree that they've got in the middle of the desert, And all of these guys, the faces, they're like eating hamburgers and tossing rolls around, and they're getting ready. And oh, you know what? This guy's got a bucket full of rocks that he's handing out. They're getting ready to stone him. And so he goes to light his cigarette, and he's like, "No, that is my cigarette." And so they turn on this.
absolutely love that plot device too. It's just so good. A simple little plot device, you know?
Yeah. And so, then Flame keeps almost getting to the cigarette. And then he's like, I'm going to turn this machine on. I love this machine that just looks like a Sarlacc pit
Yeah.
made out of metal. Grinding teeth and these little like razor scythes that are going to come in. And so then they start throwing a bunch of rocks. And then we understand what this whole thing is for. As the rocks start to fill up the bucket, he's going to get dropped into the metal Sarlacc pit. And out of his shirt falls the whistle that we got from dear old Clara and Marjorie.
I love it. And it also flashes back to that yellow and red. Wow, just so sophisticated. With with like high intensity action. Seems like I love the visual cues for that. So you almost expect it,
Yeah. I mean, it really is incredible storytelling when it comes to the use of the color temperatures.
Yeah.
So he blows the whistle, which we're reminded says for emergencies. We get the yellow notes that are coming from the whistle, and literally the cavalry arrives. And so then we get a battle between Civil War American cavalry and stereotype Bedouins. And then this guy shows up, and he hands them back his cigarette, which he takes out. One of my favorite. This is like a Warner Brothers sound effect. Let's see, where is it? Yeah, right there. Tweet.
And he looks so disappointed, like, hey.
So now he gets his cigarette back, and now his cigarette is bent, it will remain bent the entire time. And so, he's told, if I were you, I'd get the heck out of here. So he runs. These guys, and this is where you start to notice something really interesting. They are pretending to stab each other. And so he stabs him, but he stabs him under the arm. And then somebody yells, "Cut." And we break the fourth wall, and we have the director who's just offset, and the camera. Okay, and the harem girl and gun props. Everybody pack it up, and they strike the set. And then you realize that this harem girl is actually our Cyclops friend, who's in drag, who gets paid a wad of cash. And Mac is still being chased, very Sunday cartoonishly, by the way. He trips. And luckily, right as these guys are right on top of him, this football player catches this pass and ends up knocking them out of the way. And so then they get in a fight. The referee is calling foul for having swords on the field, and we have like a good old-fashioned Adam West kind of throwdown. The football kind of pops out. He's crawling on his hands and knees, and he finds a switch on a rock. And he turns the lights off and on, which then they realize, wait, we were all going after this guy. He turns the lights back on. They start running for him. So now he's running away in the dark. It's some nice silhouette action. And I really love that we have moved into like a Sunday comic style. We no longer have like interesting angles or anything. It's like flat, dead on. The horizon split in half here in the frame. We're always looking at the side view every time we see this group of people chasing him. It's very side-scrolling video game like.
Wow.
And then we have, I love that the Bedouins are yelling in their alphabet, and the football players are yelling in like X's and O's. So they're like yelling plays at each other. They show up to this ghost town. You see a skeleton of a horse. Coach Thumpson is dead and hung, in effigy. And then we have like an actual dead person skeleton here, spider webs. And we go into this very derelict bar where something has gone on, and we've got like, the Sultan's kind of sabers and Old West things. We've got a rubber chicken with a knife through its neck above the door. A bone-handled knife down here.
That's so great.
And then we meet this guy. And so he's drinking, and Mac's about to hit him over the head. And I love that he interrupts himself by overlapping his own text, which just kind of like is an interesting lettering device to show that he might be kind of mumbling or slurring his words, and you're not really going to get all of it without having to spell everything wrong, which I kind of hate. So anyway, this is Sven. His name is Sven. And he says, anyway, let's not stand here, John, when we could be comfortable. Pull up a chair, take a weight off. And so they peek behind the door, and he says, no. All right, shh. And he says, old man, I need a place to hide. So they kind of go back and forth. And then he yells, you hear that? You'll never take him alive. He's like, what, man? So he's like, follow me. So then they go into the back. The football player just runs through the wall. They open the door, and he's in a nice bar. Candle chandeliers, Old West style, wagon wheel up top, people ordering drinks. We have more of this guy's stuff. He's drinking out of a XXX moonshine jug. We're deep into the South now with facial hair and accordions and that type of
ballroom
stuff.
dancers. Yeah,
and then we have more. I think my favorite thing is just the different ways that they communicate without like English words.
Yeah, the football play speech thing is just one of the funniest. That literally is probably one of the funniest things I had forgotten about that, and that's probably one of the funniest things I've seen in comics in a long time.
Yeah. So anyway, and then they're not even doing it when they're yelling. Like they're having a very calm conversation, as you can tell from this hand gesture, and he's just very calmly, and he's like, football play? Arabic. So that's just how he talks. So anyway, he's mad at him for, being really loud. And then he says, guys, he's in here. And so then there's kind of this situation where he's ducking and sort of crouch running behind the bar. We get the Charlie Brown scribble angry thing. He steals somebody's hat and puts it over him as he walks by the football player.
Yeah, he finally got a shot there too.
What's that?
He got a shot of whatever that drink
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he gets a nice he's kind of angry, so he gets a shot. That's the first time he's had a drink.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so this guy knocks his hat off and he bumps into this other guy who's very angry. And on and on and on. I'm going to speed up here and not give away the ending. He's running through this bar. He walks in. He finds this room. She tosses some panties at him. Says that she was expecting him. He's about to stab her with a knife. And she says, you don't need that, do you? And she starts to proposition him. And he says he's got $6. To which she's not super impressed with. And we have a giant asterisk mark as they crash through the door. And the assistant football coach strings him up on the thing. Oh no, actually that's staff. That's one of the PAs. And then they slap the horse that he's on. The law shows up. And so then they're going to have a duel. And he says it's between you and him, so he gives it to him. They have this stare down spaghetti Western style.
And he's just paying off everybody throughout this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, he just continues to pass this one wad of cash around. It's great. And while they're having the showdown, we also notice that hidden in the windows, we have World War One snipers that are all trained on our friend Mac here, and I love that we know that they're in the air because of the aerial perspective of this panel here.
Yeah.
The sniper rifle shot. And so very subtly we realize that these people that are laying on the ground are actually laying on the roof.
Yeah.
Because of that.
So
he goes to shoot his gun. It's a cap gun, and so it goes pop, pop, pop. And nobody else has cap guns. So he rides his bicycle away. He's riding very quickly. He comes up to a used car lot. This car is $4,789. So this used car salesman in his green plaid jacket starts to try to sell him a car, but remember, he only has $6. And so then they give him this rust bucket jalopy, which I think is the same car from the one that Superman threw. And then he gets all this money and he's paying the other guy who's loading up the cash into the saddlebags. Gets in, and the football team gets in the convertible, and he gets in the old Corolla DeVille car. Now we have ourselves an old school car chase.
Oh, it's so good. It's like this crazy Rolls Royce, like chasing this tiny, like old junker
through the desert.
Oh,
it's great.
It's so
there's
wonderful.
There's little signs like dip ahead, and this is like none of these cars have touched the ground ever. they're always bouncing and screeching, and then we have just our friend the squirrel just kind of watching.
Yeah, dip ahead's pretty great for like right before a car flies off a cliff too.
Right. Dip ahead, and it's a sheer drop off.
The humor, the visual humor.
So he bails out, and Mary Poppins the drop here with his umbrella. Unfortunately, down in the valley below, we have some workers with a semi truck full of nitroglycerin.
Of course.
And so this guy gets in the fire engine and starts speeding away, and then this hippo, gets scared in his little puddle, and the nitroglycerin goes down into the hole. They're running away. There's some serious problems. We have a large explosion. Still being chased by the fire truck. So anyway, I don't want to give the rest away, but we kind of see things progress, and that's it. So the end is worth the payoff, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody. So
yeah.
So let's take a moment to do an adjustment.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Let me make sure I get the right one here. All right. So the Indie Review Show. Hold on a sec. I got you. The Indie Review Show is brought to you by Audible. You can get a free audiobook to support the show by going to audibletrial.com/IRS. This week, I am recommending Our Band Could Be Your Life, scenes from the American indie underground. And this book is just it. I'll just kind of read the log line, but for music nerds, I think this is just an incredible book. It's incredibly interesting. So it's the never before told story of the musical revolution that happened right under the nose of Reagan in the 1980s, when a small but sprawling network of bands, labels, fanzines, radio stations, and other subversives re-energized American rock with punk rock's do-it-yourself credo and created music that was deeply personal and brilliant. It basically follows the movement of punk rock from the 80s all the way into like the early 90s. And it profiles kind of Mission of Burma, the Butthole Surfers, the Minutemen, Sonic Youth, Black Flag, Big Black, Husker Du, Fugazi, Minor Threat, Mudhoney, The Replacements, Beat Happening, and Dinosaur Jr. And it's just super cool, a super interesting window into punk rock. And I don't even think you have to be like a huge fan of punk rock to actually enjoy the book. Although if you are interested in kind of learning more about some of the history of that movement, it's just a recommendation. So that's what I would say. And then let's see. Also, if you like this book or any the book we are currently reviewing or any of the other books we're recommending, go to irisagency.com. A really easy way to support the show is to click one of the links on irisagency.com before you purchase anything on Amazon. It gives us a kickback and it doesn't raise the price for you. And with that being said, I think the books are balanced. So let's get back to it. And there we go.
So I think Gary sums this up pretty well. I can't help but assume the primary appeal of this to Perez was simply being able to draw 400 completely different and random things in the same book. And I think that's why I love it, is I get very bored if I have to do the same thing too often or whatever. I switch it up quite a bit.
Yeah.
So this one is a little bit different than a lot of the shows we've done in the past because we both love this book and have previously read it. So neither of us is trying to convince the other, but what are some takeaways, Josh?
So, I mean, it was noted throughout, but I think I believe this book picked up a couple Eisners too. So it's not like we're alone in loving this book. Yeah. But it's like the color usage is the most striking thing, I think, for anyone. Perez's cartooning in general is just masterful, but the use of variation in style with his cartooning mixed with just the absolute technical proficiency of the color and how all the color is so smartly chosen and thought out to reinforce movement, action, suspense, to give mood, to help certain themes make sense visually without a need for captions. Because like you very well pointed out, it's like most of that could be almost like you could take out the words entirely from that book and still be able to follow it, which is just kind of insane considering the amount of loops and twists and turns that they're asking you to follow. Right. It's just, so to me, I think it's just a masterful example of just comics at their best, and comics doing something that, man, it gives you a somewhat idea of what a film would look like. But I think the cool thing about Tale of Sand is it feels like a comic, even though it's a comic adaptation of a script for a experimental film. It feels like a comic doing something that only comics can. Yeah. And so I think the cool thing is it seems like he got the vibe of what Henson wanted to do with the film and took the same approach, except just using comics as the medium. So Henson was a guy who would exploit and explore and experiment doing things in film that only film can do. And I think Perez definitely did that with comics. So it's hard to think of anything beyond that other than like, I think there's an insane amount anyone could pull from this book, especially when it comes to layout and clarity. Even with abstraction, just like total visual storytelling clarity. The fascinating thing about it is insane in its chaos. Yeah. And yet you never feel like you're lost. Like there's one or two spreads where you're kind of like, I'm not sure exactly if this is a double page spread or if I should go top to bottom. But for the most part, you know exactly where you're supposed to look. And yet there's no panel borders. There's no typical situations where you've got like, the balloon is going to lead you through the thing. But yet the way the use of color and the use of value and the placement of those objects, you still get a feel for those things, even when they're stacked on top of each other. Yeah. Of where you should look and what you should do. It really is an incredible book for that. I think the biggest thing that I like about it is just the idea of absurdity, because it was based on, he did a short film. I forget the name of the short film. But he did a short film that was basically talking about automation and the loss of identity and kind of feeling like you're
a rat in the rat race or a cog in the machine. The idea of meaninglessness. Yeah. Of just things not having meaning in your actions and your behaviors.
Yeah.
And this script was a result of, like, let's do a feature film of that, where we actually just, follow a guy, and really kind of show how absurd kind of the workforce and the industry and whatever. Ultimately, in the back matter, they're talking about how this was Jim Henson's view of life as a starving artist starting out straight out of school. And it's a snapshot of what he felt like, struggling to try to make things work. He's just trying to get a drink. He's just trying to light a cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
And yet all of these absurd and stupid and insane things keep getting in his way and popping out of nowhere and surprising him. And he's being driven, but he doesn't exactly know why or where he's going or what is going on. And so the idea of the throughput idea of the whole book, the spine, if you might say, is just so realistic, even though it's an abstract surrealist comedy. It's so realistic when you feel like, I don't know why I'm doing this or why I feel like I should be doing this. And I feel like I'm never quite satisfied. I never get to light that cigarette. I never get to do the thing that I want to do, but I feel like I keep getting close and it's just right over the horizon. And then something explodes or some guy comes along and plants a cartoon bomb. And so I think we've all kind of felt that absurdist struggle for success, and that success is just around the corner. And I won't spoil the story, but the end really wraps it up in a very cynical way of that situation, where he gets to where he's going and realizes that it's not what he expected. And so anyway, I love the storytelling. I mean, obviously Jim Henson is a master storyteller.
Yeah.
But it carried through, in Ramon Perez, adapting that to the comic medium, because I think you could have very easily done this shot for shot 16:9 panel format, as if it was a storyboard.
Yeah.
And it would have been a poor adaptation, because you would have gotten what was literally on the page rather than what was intended to be on the screen.
Yeah. And Henson was such a fan of experimental film that I think he would be disappointed with an adaptation of his work that was just like a straight panel for panel remake. Right. To me, I just think the thing on the story, first off, it just reminds me of Sisyphus, where it's just like this endless boulder that like sometime it's going to get up there. It's like, it's sort of a similar plot structure, but I love the zaniness of it too. And I love I've always loved this about, like the Muppets, like the Great Muppet Caper and some of the classic like Muppets films too, where there's always this level of absurdity to Henson's work. And yet there is like a real heart and authenticity in the intention. Even this character, like, I mean, what you're describing, that is Kermit. Like Kermit's always trying to kind of get the Muppets all together and manage it, and just dealing with absurd stuff that comes up trying to run a show. Right. Yeah. And like, to me, I think the other thing it also reminds me of a lot is like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which is like it's some of my favorite kinds of humor, where you have like a film being shot and then you pull out of the film and the director's like cutting the film and then some other absurdity happens. And I just love the meta nature of it, but you're right. Like, it does all that without losing the main arc and the character sort of development. But I guess half the gag is it's kind of, but anyhow, yeah, it's just it's a brilliant book. And like, that's definitely one that I think should be in anybody's graphic novel library. Also just anything Jim Henson tends to be pretty good. So,
yeah. I mean, it's almost like I'm kind of imagining that if you wanted to describe like this story in a nutshell, imagine a hamster running in a wheel, replace the hamster with a man trying to succeed, and replace the wheel with 1973 movie tropes.
Yes.
It's just like, I love everything about that. So
I love that.
Anyway, yeah, I mean, to say what I would steal, I don't know, but I'm going to do The Fifth Beatle, which has a very similar vibe, except it's less absurd. But on the art standpoint, it has a very similar feel. And these all kind of came out, 2012 to 2015. There was kind of this indie painterly, absurdist, surrealist revival for a couple years there that just did some awesome stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so
I love it.
Well, we're gonna do an after party here on my channel, and so you can go to CoreyKerr.com and click on What's New, and that'll be linked to YouTube there, or you can just Google my name on YouTube, and we'll start that up in a few minutes. And Josh, where can we find your stuff?
JoshuaKemble.com. You can also on JoshuaKemble.com. There's a new section called New Events, which will let you know upcoming signings and the addresses of those signings too, just in case you're curious to like show up and maybe get a signed book, or like I might do sketches, and I definitely will. Hopefully they arrive in time, but have like sticker giveaways and like postcards and fun stuff like that. And I'm down to chat and meet anyone there, honestly. And while you're at it, pick up 2 stories on Amazon. Sorry, I'm mentioning like 3 things, and we're only supposed to mention 1. I just remembered that. So I'll keep it.
And make sure to go to irsagency.com, because at irsagency.com, you'll see this is what we did today. Here's how you can be on the show, either actually on the show or sending us a review of the books that you think. Here's our past episodes. And next week, Josh is going to cover Darth Vader and Son. And you can kind of see what's in the queue if you'd like to buy the books ahead of time. If you don't want to buy the books ahead of time and you want to go review the books before you purchase them, you can see previous episodes, and there'll be links to each one of those. Here's where you can get a free audiobook on Audible. Join us on Patreon, and on and on and on. So
Corey,
thanks for joining us tonight. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
One last thing. I just want to mention, because this is usually brought up at the end of the show, where Corey will be like joking that he brings the lowbrow and I bring the highbrow. And I just want to mention this week he brought, like, I know it's comedy, but this is one of the most highbrow like graphic novels you could bring. And next week I'm bringing Darth Vader and Son. So I'm just pointing that out. We've traded places
a little bit. Oh, don't worry. I'll get back to bringing the the weird indie nonsense here pretty soon. But actually, ironically enough, the next one I'm going to do is I Kill Giants, which is extremely not lowbrow. I don't want to give too much away, but it is it's a metaphor for childhood trauma. And it is a phenomenal book. By the way, if you guys are going to join us for that one, Amazon adapted that into a movie, which you can watch on Amazon Prime. And I would highly recommend that you watch it, because it is an incredibly well done adaptation of this story. And it would help you understand what's going on in the comic, as I may or may not reveal what the metaphor is all about. So join us there as well. But yeah, I don't know. We'll probably take turns. Josh and I have a weird sync situation where we tend to be very synced up. So if I flip to serious, I think Josh is going to flip to comic and vice versa. So
I love it.
Okay, we'll catch you guys in a few minutes on my channel. Thanks for joining us. If you'd like to become an agent of the Indie Review Show, we'd love to have your thoughts and feelings of what's going on in the comments of this video, or emailed to us on irsagency.com. There's instructions on how to do that, and we'll include your thoughts and your review on the show that way. And thanks for joining us.